Department of Education Secretary Miguel Cardona unveils his evil plan to refocus American schools away from learning and toward racial and gender equity. Well, it only took a few months to make Betsy DeVos look overqualified. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and I think anybody in this room could do a better job. This is The Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Dr. Duke Show. This is the only program you're going to find that keeps you educated day to day on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses and preschool-clad graduate courses around the world. Today's show is sponsored by the Honorable Mike Lindell and our friends at MyPillow. For more than 15 years, MyPillow has been producing the most comfortable pillows in the world. In fact, they've sold over 40 million pillows. In addition, MyPillow sells bed sheets, towels, bathrobes, dog beds. Our audience, that means you, the Dr. Duke Show viewer, can save up to 66% on all of this stuff by simply using the code Dr. Duke, D-R-D-U-K-E. That's right. Use the code D-R-D-U-K-E at MyPillow.com. Support a great American company and save money. And by supporting MyPillow, you also support this show. You want to give a great, big, metaphorical middle finger to YouTube and to Facebook with all their demonetization is buy a pound of pillows and a bed full of towels. So again, D-R-D-U-K-E at MyPillow.com. Okay, today we start with Miguel Cardona, the disaster. Oh, by the way, a disaster. We all knew he was a disaster. He was the superintendent, the chairman of the Department of Education in Connecticut. We watched as he created critical race theory classes, the first required ethnic studies course for high school kids around the country. We saw it, and how many Republicans voted against him when he came up for nomination as Department of Education Secretary? None. Nobody did. Do you remember how many voted against Betsy DeVos? I do. Quite a few Democrats did. Not one. This is why Republicans, more often than not, are worth nothing. To get Betsy DeVos, who was a milquetoast candidate, you knew Betsy wasn't going to really fix anything. She was a big supporter of Common Core. She was on Jeb Bush's Common Core commission, right? We knew that with Betsy DeVos, the best we could hope for is it wouldn't get too much worse. And still, half the Democrats voted against her. And some Republicans, I wouldn't be surprised, wanted to. Now you got Cardona, who is as dangerous as Arnie Duncan, but not as spectacularly stupid, and didn't get a single Republican vote to stand in the way of this. And now what's he doing? He's using the Department of Education to fund his programmings, all of it, his whole worldview is what we said in the opening. Change the focus of American education away from education and toward social justice.
And that's why we know now what the blueprint is for the Department of Ed and how they are spending the American Rescue Plan's historic funding for schools.
All that
Listen
money.
To that.
All that money.
Historic funding for schools. And you've got to be telling yourself at home, we've overspent for decades.
What are we paying
now
for?
How much are we spending? Exactly.
The more money we give them, the less able to read and write our kids are.
It just doesn't make sense now, does it? So, as you already said, it's all about the equity. It's all about the equity and the Benjamins with these people. So, the U.S. Department of Ed announced on their Twitter that they have the American Rescue Plan and that school communities must put equity at the center of all work to reopen safely, because obviously we know they've been using COVID this entire time.
But wait a second. What in the world does that statement mean? It's gibberish. So in order for schools to open because of COVID, the only way your schools will be able to reopen safely is equity?
Equity killed the virus. Equity is super... I can't say man or woman. I have to say super something.
I imagine an antiseptic spray called Equity that you could spray on the COVID-19 virus and it kills it. What in the world are these educrats talking about? The only safe way to open is with equity. COVID was a disease. COVID is a virus. The only way to put equity at the center of all to reopen, say, are you kidding me?
Well, let's just go on and hear from the horse himself, Miguel Cardona, when he says, while COVID-19 has worsened many inequities in our schools and communities, we know that even before the pandemic, a high-quality education was out of reach for too many of our nation's students and families.
Stop. Who's in charge? Who's been in charge of our nation's and our family's education for 50, 60 years? The radical left. So you're telling me that well before COVID came along, we in the Department of Education have not been able to educate your kids. Now that the pandemic's over, we're not going to be able to educate your kids either because it's all about the equity.
Our mission at the department is to safely reopen schools for in-person learning, dramatically increase investments in communities that for too long have been the furthest from opportunity, and reimagine our schools so that all students have their needs met.
Reimagine there's no education. It's easy if you try. No books before us, above us. We all cry. Imagine all the ignorant little children living for today. I got to give the You may say I'm an educrat.
Ooh. A schemer.
A schemer.
I just came up with it.
You may say I'm a schemer, but I'm not the only one. America, get ready to get Cardona'd in about 2 months.
Okay, well, we're going to finish what Cardona said after that little interlude.
Finish him.
He says, we must take bold action together to ensure our nation's schools are defined not by disparities, but by equity and opportunity for all.
Not defined by, not defined by disparities, but by equity. Okay, what do either of those things have to do with actual learning? And the answer is nothing. Do you see this? I lost my lunch about this yesterday. I'm going to lose my lunch about it again today. When was the last time anybody involved with any kind of schooling in this country actually had anything to say at all about education? What happened to us? We can't even talk about math, can't even talk about reading and writing, can't even talk about great books anymore. School has nothing to do with school. In fact, we gotta stop calling them schools. They are not American public schools. They are American social justice sleepaway camps, daycare camps, right? That's what they are. They're just social justice indoctrination centers. Places where your kid gets checked in to get his mindset right, which means from their perspective, they set your mind completely left.
Well, maybe because, of the virus, you can't actually do in-person camps, but you can attend a Equity Summit series.
Oh, boy.
Which will be virtual in June. Enjoy. We're just going to keep on keeping on with the Cardona train today, where he agrees that men who want to compete as women, that's A-okay. A-okay in his book. And he decided, you know what? I'm going to go on ESPN, in studio with them, spend taxpayer dollars and time to talk on ESPN about doing just that.
Think about what Republican governors are trying to do in places like Oklahoma and Alabama and Texas and South Carolina. They're trying to make sure laws are passed to guarantee that the young women of America have the right to compete in sports against other women and girls, not to having their sporting events overrun by biological males who have only begun the process of transitioning. Boys and young men with real male bodies taking awards and prizes and ribbons and scholarships away from them. So all these Republican governors trying to do the right thing, where Republican senators not one of them could be bothered to vote against Cardona as the DOE secretary. Not one of them. This is the kind of crap you get. It's not enough what he told you in the first segment, that we're going to turn your schools, we're going to refocus them away from education and towards equity. Now, as far as your little girls are concerned, here you go.
So what do you say to the argument that allowing transgender athletes to compete in certain competitions is unfair to female athletes?
I recognize there's a lot of concern around the that issue. But what's not tolerable is saying that some students cannot participate because of their gender. LGBTQ students have endured more harassment than most other groups. So it's critically important that we stand with them and give them opportunities to engage in what every other child can engage in without harassment. I do believe in local control, I do believe in state control, but we do have a responsibility to protect the civil rights of students. And if we feel the civil rights are being violated, we will act.
Okay, couple things there. Number one, if you're saying that the trans community, so many of them, within
0.1001% of them,
within every single school, and all of them wanting to be on every sports team, they are not the ones who are being targeted. And when it comes to sports,
they are the harassers,
True.
Not the harassed.
And also, you think about the Dr. Dukes of the world. Now,
Yes,
if
sir.
you put him on a sports team, he will be the one harassed more than the trans student.
At my age, when I was their age, I was pretty athletic. Just saying. Just saying.
Do you believe that?
Just saying.
So there's absolutely no reason, obviously, for this. And everything he says is just all gobbledygook. And your issue
It's
is
the
that
smugness,
the
right?
smugness.
The smugness of this. We're going to act, right? I believe in local control.
That's
really? You just in the first segment said you're taking all control of your kids' education away from families and centering at the Federal Department of Education. You're going to make sure, as the Secretary of Education, that equity becomes what goes on in every. You really care about. I believe in local control. No, you don't. You smiling demon, you right? You lying, look in the camera whore. You don't believe any of it. You're a liar. And I'm gonna go back and say what Katie said. The kids we're talking about here, these able-bodied male athletes who are now taking opportunity away from girls, they are thugs and bullies. Any other instance in which a full able-bodied male did this to girls, you would be all over it with Title IX.
So as we know, there are some states and some local municipalities that are trying to fight back. And we know that, again, Cardona believes in that. And it was kind of the best one yet, I'll say, since Pride Month began on June 1. Why not, on that very same day, have Florida Governor Ron DeSantis ban transgender athletes from girls and women's competitions? Ron DeSantis.
If you
What
care
guy?
that much, if you really care that much, Mr. Cardona, then go ahead and start instituting trans sporting events. Do it. And if that means that there's like one in every district, that they have to be flown to Texas to play every weekend. You got all our money anyway. You keep getting more and more money from Republicans and Democrats who control the budget. So just do it and make it really, really sweet for them. Trans leagues, right? Where transgender men, boys, able-bodied men and boys who think they're women can get together and compete against each other. And if that means, again, you're spending billions of dollars to accommodate 400 athletes nationwide, then we have a moral obligation to do it, don't we? What better way to make them feel good than to give them their own sports leagues?
And as a little side tangent, ESPN also took the time to ask Cardona about the 450 pending investigations regarding sexual violence and harassment.
Yep.
And, some of these have been going on for years. And here's his response. Try and keep your lunch down. That's a priority for me. We need to do better. Every case is a face. Every case that's waiting is a student that felt harassed or violated, and they deserve an opportunity to be heard and a ruling to take place. Strike 3 and you're out, Cardona. See how I tied that in there with the sports? Anyway, Cardona, in May, he actually announced that he had reversed a Trump administration ban on eligibility for getting the dollar signs from the COVID relief grants to the illegal aliens and the international college students. As Cardona told one of his, I'm sure, favorite publications, the Washington Post, the pandemic didn't discriminate. Wait a minute, I thought it did.
Everything does, right?
I'm confused because I've been told by many different people that it did discriminate against all the minorities.
He just said in the first segment we did today, he just said
Anyway.
that COVID made it worse for minorities.
Anyways, it apparently now didn't. We don't know. They can change like they want to change their gender. And we want to make sure that all students have an opportunity to access to funds to help them get back on track. The Biden administration has something called the final rule. It overturned the Trump-era policy and that had blocked federal stimulus grants by getting access to those for the people who are illegally in this country. The final rule, as it's called, it says the secretary amends the regulations so that an institution of higher ed may appropriately determine which individuals currently or previously enrolled at an institution are eligible to receive emergency financial aid grants to students under the Higher Education Emergency Relief Programs as originally enacted under the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security. The CARES Act is what
I love the final act, right? The final.
It's like the final countdown.
Or the final solution.
Rule.
Don't you just love the language
rule.
here? The final rule. Too bad Princeton wasn't involved. I could give my Eisengruber, right? I could give my Eisengruber. I'm starting to slip into it now. Stop me before I start saying yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but you know what I'm saying here.
Volt.
So the final rule, right? How Orwellian that is. We're going to take American taxpayer money and we're going to meant for COVID relief, and we're going to allow schools not to spend it on COVID relief, but instead to give it to illegal aliens. Isn't that nice?
It's their COVID relief.
Yeah, that's right. I guess we're in every other way. The Biden administration is conducting an America Last policy. Trump was America first, Biden's America last, and you see it more than anywhere else in the shambles that is American education today.
Well, as Senator Patty Murray, who's a Democrat in Washington, says it all. Democrat, Washington, same difference. Is also the chair of the Senate committee that currently oversees education. She praised what Cardona did. She just praised it because, as she says, every student struggling because of this pandemic deserves access to emergency aid that can make all the difference. After so many months of pushing back against the previous administration, I'm so relieved that Secretary Cardona took this important step. Don't you just, every time you read quotes by these people, it's all the buzzwords. It's like you should play buzzword bingo on these people. You'll get hammered if you're playing it as a drinking game real quick, up quick and in a hurry.
Not one vote from the Republicans to stop this guy. The same Republicans who watched the staggeringly boring Betsy DeVos get beaten up again and again and again to be accused to be a mass murderer, a hater of children. The Republicans sat by and watched that and didn't cast a single vote to stop this guy from further destroying American schools. It makes no sense to me. You were in the minority, right? What did you have to lose, Republicans? What did you have to lose? So 40 of you voted against Cardona. Think about how you'd be looking right now to the American people. 60 of you, 48 of you, 47 of you, whatever it is, the entire Senate voted against this guy. He still got elected. And you know what you would look like right now? Heroes. People who actually care about education. Instead, you rolled over and took it. Congratulations. Instant classic, the only thing that can take my blood pressure down after talking about some of these stories, what education used to be before it became irremediably politicized. Back in the 14th century, the early renaissance of humanism, when the world was changing, where education, the humanist scholars, the great Christian humanists of the 13th, 14th, and 15th centuries, they were by all means Christian humanists. The power of education, particularly Christian-based education, to transform lives and civilization. Well, here's another great one of those Renaissance humanists. Giovanni Boccaccio, born in 1313, died in 1375, a contemporary of Petrarca, who we saw yesterday. He was an Italian writer, poet, correspondent of Petrarch's, and an important Renaissance humanist. He was known par excellence as the Certadolese, and one of the most important figures in the European literary panorama of the 14th century. Here's some quotes from Boccaccio. Quote, "The power of the pen is far greater than those people suppose who have not proved it by experience. The power of the pen is mightier than the sword. It is even more powerful. And if the only people who don't see the power of being able to write well are people who are incapable of trying to write themselves, the more people are writing in the name of what's good, the more power you have over bullies with guns. How about this quote? You must read. You must persevere. You must sit up at night. You must inquire and exert the utmost power of your mind. If one way does not lead to the desired meaning, take another. If obstacles arise, then still another, until, if your strength holds out, you will find that clear, which at first looked dark. Keep at it. Keep at it. Maybe that attitude, keep at it, don't quit, don't give up, maybe that's the answer to struggling kids in our schools, particularly struggling inner school kids. Rather than lowering expectations and destroying achievement because of kids who can't quite hang in there, maybe we go back to a system where merit and effort matters. Every kid can get it if he hangs on long enough. Go to the next quote. How about this one? To have compassion for those who suffer is a human quality which everyone should possess, especially those who have required comfort themselves in the past and have managed to find it in others. Very humane. And how about this? In the affairs of this world, poverty alone is without envy. Of all the bad things you can get into, somebody will envy you for your lust. Somebody will envy you for being a glutton and eating all that good food. The one thing no one will ever envy you for is your poverty. So get out of it through opportunity. And just because it's important, he was the first one, Boccaccio, to actually say the following: do as we say, not as we do. We're all sinners. We're all frail. We can still give you good advice, though we're sinners ourselves. Do as we say, not as we do.
All right, those are the stories for today. And if you have a question for us, please feel free to drop it in our mailbag by emailing askduke@fpeusa.org. And of course, if you enjoy our content, please support our show and join the Patriot Club. Your one-time $99 tax-deductible donation keeps this show moving down the rails. Now simply visit patriotclub.us to get signed up. That's patriotclub.us. And as just a little tiny token of our appreciation, we will send you our signature tumbler.
And that wraps up the show. For Freedom Project, I'm Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, do what we say what we do, and stay educated always.